The first thing I want to talk to you about is cancer. You know the statistic. You've heard it over and over. It used to be the 1 person in 9 would get cancer, and then 1 woman in 8 would get cancer, and then 1 man in 6, and then 1 woman in 4, and then 1 man in 3, and then 1 woman in 3. And now in the United States, approximately 1 woman and 1 man in 3 will have cancer sometime in his or her life. We have brought the odds down from a rare disease in our parents' time, one that was talked about with hushed tones, oh my, she has cancer, to a fact of life. There is not one of us who has not been touched by cancer, either in ourselves or in our families or in our neighbors or in our children's classmates. We are being slaughtered. Yes, it takes a genetic aberration to create a cancer, but we now know that the environment changes our genetic expression, and therefore we now know that we can give ourselves, and more horrifyingly, give each other cancer. And we can do that in a variety of ways. We can do that with mercury, we can do that with aluminum, we can do that with chemicals, we can do that with hormone disruptors like BPA and other plasticizers. We can do that with chemtrails. We can do that with radiation. We can do that with vaccines. We do that with vaccines. And we do that in 2 ways. One is because the immune onslaught that takes place following every single vaccine weakens our ability to get rid of the cancer cells that we are designed to eliminate. And second of all, the stealth viruses and the parts of viruses that are carried in the vaccines. And by the way, it now turns out that the CDC and the FDA have known that the MMR vaccine, so hotly defended, has been contaminated with retroviruses since 1994, to say nothing of the polio vaccine that has been contaminated with SV40 and the other many stealth viruses. We also include parts of viruses and whole viruses that then mutate. And excuse me, we're talking about multiple mechanisms for giving ourselves and giving our children cancers. And oh, by the way, who knows what happens when a pregnant woman is vaccinated with toxins and with stealth viruses and with regular viruses and bacteria and with fragments of DNA and with the messy brew of poisons that is every vaccine. So we are giving ourselves cancer through multiple channels. But once you have a cancer is a cancer. It doesn't really matter whether the cancer came from the SV40 virus or whether the cancer came from exposure to an endocrine disrupting drug, or whether the cancer came from secondhand smoke or the thorium or barium in the chemtrails. Once you have cancer, the mechanism is pretty much the same. The cancer has ways to hide from your immune system detection and destruction. And your immune system is weakened by the fact that you've been exposed to the toxin or the free radical generator or the virus or the combination of them. And so now you have cells which are no longer able to decide when to die. Now, if you are a person and you decide to kill yourself, if you decide to commit suicide, in most cultures, that is a crime. In many cultures, it is regarded as a sign of illness, but also something to be prevented. And I can understand that. But if you're a cell and you decide to die, the likelihood is that you are carrying out the process of apoptosis. Ralph, could you put the phrase apoptosis or the term apoptosis on the live stream so people who are not familiar with it can see it? Apoptosis means programmed cell death. It means that when the cell has lived the life that it's supposed to live and either reproduced or not reproduced or done what it's supposed to do, it then says, okay, guys, it's been nice knowing you, and it shuts down its mechanisms and it dies. It's called programmed cell death because that's exactly what's supposed to happen. But if a cell's genetic programming is messed with by GMO foods, for example, where the genetic composition is changed by wandering genes, or by any of the other mechanisms, if a cell decides not only is it not going to die, but it's going to live forever. Hey, look at me, fellas. I'm immortal. I've decided not only not to die, but to reproduce and spread my DNA throughout the universe. So the cell which perhaps should be dying, or the cell which perhaps should not be reproducing, the cell which should be getting signals from the neighboring cells that say, hey, we're packed really tightly here, and that's the way it's supposed to be, so you don't have to reproduce. It stops hearing those signals and the other chemical controls that we put out by the huge number, and it starts to divide. And now you have two cells that think they ought to be immortal, and they divide. And now you've got 4 cells that think they should be immortal. So far, no problem. And then you've got 8 cells, and then you've got 16 cells, and then you've got 32 cells. Now, when this process is going on from a zygote, from a fertilized ovum that the sperm has penetrated, that's a great thing. And eventually we call that ball of cells that's growing and dividing a baby. Not a problem. But when it's not supposed to happen, and the cells divide and divide and divide, we don't call it a baby, we call it a tumor. Or we call it a blood cancer because the cells are moving around, but they're not dying, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. At this point, what's left of the immune system goes into high drive and tries to catch the cells and tries to kill the cells and tries to bring things back under control. And if it can, well and good. And one of the ways that you can bring the cells back under control is to biochemically tap them on the shoulder and say, excuse me, your DNA has become deranged, and chemical that I am, or CBD molecule that I am, or other beneficial influence that I am, I'd like to help you move your DNA configuration back to normal. And so a cell can re-differentiate and actually go from being a cancer cell or a precancer cell to being a normal cell. Of course, if chemotherapy is entered into the mix, that can't happen. And if radiation is entered into the mix, that can't happen. But ideally, the best thing in terms of cancer, of course, is for no one to ever get cancer. But if someone does get cancer, for the body to do two things. One, to eliminate the cancerous cells, and hopefully to eliminate the cause that the cancer was created through, and two, to cause the cells that are still cancerous to return to a normal differentiated state, because cancer cells are considered to be undifferentiated. They become primitive. They become more like the cells that divide early on in the development of the embryo. They just divide and divide and divide and divide. So if you can get them to redifferentiate, shazam, no more cancer. But what if the immune system has already been damaged? What if you don't have enough nutrients and enough cofactors and enough curcumin and enough vitamins and enough vitamin C and enough wholesome nutrition for your immune system? Nanosilver. What if you don't have enough anti-inflammatory power? You don't have enough antioxidants. You don't have enough CBD, anti-inflammatory function on board. Then the cancer cells can actually hide behind a wall of inflammation. They put out chemicals that cause the body to create inflammatory changes, and they do something else. Cancer cells have a very high metabolic rate. They metabolize fast, and they generate heat, by the way, when they do that. And they also need a lot of nutrition. They need a lot of nitrogen to grow and make the proteins that they are made of. They need a lot of oxygen. They need a lot of blood sugar. They love blood sugar. And so this mass of cells that's growing and growing and growing starts producing chemicals, markers, signals that cause blood cells to grow into the tumor. That's called angiogenesis. Angio referring to the blood vessels, genesis referring to the creation of blood vessels. And so we have angiogenesis. And now we have the body pouring nutrients and oxygen and blood sugar into the cancer. And the cancer says, yeah, baby, and starts growing like a cancer. Meanwhile, the immune system is falling further and further behind. Now, at this point, somebody has a lump, or somebody has a sore that will not heal, or somebody has unexplained bleeding, or somebody has malaise, or they have a stroke, or suddenly they have a change in their level of functioning, and an MRI is done, maybe a CAT scan is done. CAT scans are very dangerous, by the way. High levels of radiation, avoid CAT scans at all costs. Or they have a blood test done, and at that point, there is a diagnosis made, and the doctor says, I'm really sorry to tell you this, you have cancer. And the patient says, what do I do? And generally the doctor says, well, I'd like you to see my friend, the oncologist. And oncologists come in two flavors. They come in medical oncologists who give you chemotherapy, and they come in radiation oncologists who give you radiation treatments. Both of them are people that I believe, as a physician, you would do well to avoid. Here's why. Study after study shows that people who have breast cancer, for example, and do not do chemotherapy or radiation live longer than people who do chemotherapy and radiation. That's upsetting. People who have chemotherapy, who have radiation, frequently have utterly vile quality of life, and even more frequently, the actual benefit that they get might be nothing, might be measured in days or weeks or even a month or two of enhanced survival. But meanwhile, any shred of immune functioning that they had has now been wiped out. Meanwhile, any quality of life that they might have had has now been savaged. Same thing with radiation. Any immune system function that they might have had has been burned out. Now, sometimes people will have cancer. Sometimes cancer is found in a lymph node, for example, and that's called a sentinel node because it tells people, tells the surgeons or whomever that there is cancer outside the main tumor. And then, for instance, in breast cancer, the entire chain of lymph nodes is removed. It's about the dumbest thing you can do. Yes, the cancer is cut out of some places. But why is the cancer in the lymph node to begin with? That's rather interesting. Well, here's how the lymph system works. The lymph system has its own circulation, and it has its own pulsation. It's a very slow pulsation. It's only several times a minute. And that pulsation moves the lymphatic fluid around the body and through nodes. Nodes are composed of sensors. And those sensors, those white cells, sniff the chemicals, metaphorically speaking. They sniff the hormones. They sniff the protein markers on the surface of cells. So here you have a cancer cell wandering through the lymph system, and a lymph node catches it and says, ooh, that doesn't belong here. That's not right. Those are proteins that I don't recognize. They're not me. They don't belong here. And so what does the lymph node do? The lymph node goes into factory mode and starts chugging out white cells that have the capacity to find that chemical by the analog of smelling it. It's not really smelling. It's a detection system that the white cells of the immune system are endowed with the ability to turn on. And then they go looking for that marker. And when they find it, they destroy the marker and the cell that's on it. In other words, the lymph nodes catch, like a filter, like a sieve, they catch the cancer cells that are wandering around. And if you have a working immune system, they say, yes, we know the enemy, and we will go defeat the enemy. And indeed, the machinery of the lymph node churns out these educated lymph cells, and then they go and do their part in destroying the cancer. But conventional medicine turns biochemistry and biology and survival on its head. Now you have a surgeon with a knife or with a radiation particle beam cutting out this line of defense, which is just as stupid, in my estimation, of injecting toxins and things that make you sick into the body of a baby, a child, a teenager, or an adult, where the toxins and the viruses and bacteria have now been entered into the body, bypassing the three main immune systems that keep us from harm. One is the skin and mucosa, but the injection goes into the body, into the skin, through the skin. One is the gut, But the injection doesn't allow the gut and the bacteria and the 80% of our immune system that lives in the gut to protect us, because the injection has been directly into our bodies. And the third huge immune system filtration and protection barrier is the lungs. But we haven't been given the opportunity to filter and screen out the toxins. They've been put directly into our bodies. Now, in the case of the flu mist or other nasally administered vaccines, that's very interesting. If you think about the anatomy of your breathing apparatus, you have to wonder, how is it that we smell anything? How is it that we detect odors? Well, the way we detect odors is that the air goes up through our nasal passages, up to the top of our nasal passages, where something called the olfactory bulb, a part of the brain, actually sticks out of the brain a little bit into this passage where the molecules that carry the odors that we're smelling, the good odors, the bad odors, the food odors, the whatever odors, carry the molecules, and then the nasal passages allow this bulb from your brain, it's actually a part of your brain, to interact with these molecules, and your brain then says, oh, that's toast. Must be breakfast. Mother must be making toast for breakfast. I guess I should get out of bed. Or you say, oh, that smells like the dog had an accident. I guess I better do something about that. And you make sense of what you smell, but that's because the brain actually comes into contact with that air. So now you have a nasally administered vaccine, okay? And you go sniff, and the flu mist has gone into your nasal passages and into your brain. Now, do you really want to move past the blood-brain barrier with viruses, with parts of viruses, with other dangerous elements that can recombine and can create not only meningitis and encephalopathy, but also change their nature and become cancer producing, or create other diseases and problems? Do you want that in your brain? Do you want that in your child's brain? You do? Oh, you must work for the vaccine companies or perhaps the globalists. But for most of us, sane people who are not interested in doing that to ourselves and others, no, we don't want that in our brain. So whether we're directly injecting poisons and infective materials and cancer-producing stealth materials into our body, bypassing the immune system, or into our brain by inserting it into our brain with the nasal vaccines, it's a bad idea. Well, back to cancer. And of course, many of the cancers that people are having are caused directly by the vaccines. We've talked about that a lot. So now we have the lymph nodes, which are supposed to do their job. And the cancer can do two things. These cancer cells that have been trapped in the lymph node filter, they can do two things. Okay, how do you screen out the lungs, Dr. Rima? I'll get to that in a second. The lymph nodes can signal to the lymph cells to produce themselves and to go attack the cancer and use the immune system resources, monocytes and so on, to kill the cancer. Good thing. Or in a weakened immune system, they can trap cancer cells, which you remember have decided to be immortal, and the cells are dividing and dividing and dividing and dividing. And that's why you sometimes get tumors in lymph cells. But that can't happen if the immune system is properly tuned and fed. Now, that takes us to industrial food. If you are facing cancer, The last thing in the world that you want is a diet composed of industrial, conventional food, the kind you buy off the shelf in your local supermarket. The minute that you find out that you have cancer, it absolutely behooves you to go onto a 100% organic diet and to do something that I don't recommend people do on an ordinary basis. And you may disagree with me, but for me, looking at biochemistry and looking at almost 50 years of patients, I see that for most people, a vegan diet, a strict vegan diet, is not a good idea. But if you have cancer, you absolutely want to go on a minimum of 3 months of a strict organic vegan diet. When you do that, you do something very interesting. You deprive the body for a short time of its ability to make something called arachidonic acid. And I'm going to type that into the chat. ARACHADONIC, arachidonic acid. Arachidonic acid is absolutely necessary for your brain. It's necessary for your nerves. It's necessary for a lot of things. But it's also very useful to the cancer cells because it is one of the core components of the inflammatory response. So if you want to deprive the cancer cells of the opportunity to sheathe themselves in an inflammatory wall that the immune cells can't get through, then you want to give the cancer access to arachidonic acid. By going on a vegan diet for about 3 months and doing other things that are healthy and helpful at the same time, you give the body a huge boost by eliminating a large part of the inflammatory response. But there's an easier, quicker, and essential way of doing that and more. And juicing up the body's cancer-fighting mechanism. According to a large number of studies which are emerging from all over the world, and that is to use CBD, cannabidiol, and to use nanosilver. There is a doctor whose name I can't tell you because the research that he's doing and the patients that he's treating have to be done under conditions of secrecy, and you'll hear why in a moment. There is a doctor who is taking our nanosilver 10 parts per million, and in a faraway, unobserved location, of course it's a very clean clinic, he is injecting that intravenous into the patients. And what's happening is that, I see that we have a minute delay from when Ralph types. Okay. When he injects the CBD into the patients, if their cancer is caused by any kind of viral or fungal or bacterial situation, they get well. Now, he's missing a bet. He's not using CBD. He should be. CBD is Mother Nature's miracle molecule. So somebody just wrote, can I inhale nanosilver? Absolutely. You put it into a nebulizer and you inhale deeply. And if you have infectious situations, it will support your immune system in such a way that you may find it to be very, very helpful. I have instructed many people to nebulize nanosilver, which divides it into a fine mist, and then you can breathe it as if you were breathing steam. Of course, the temperature is not going to burn your lungs. Yes, you can breathe nanosilver. You can drink it. You can put nanosilver either as a liquid or a gel on your skin. Nanosilver is approved for hospital use and for food service areas use to kill pathogenic bacteria. And of course, what it does there, we're not allowed to say based on the FDA and congressional gag rules. So I couldn't say that it kills bacteria in your body. I can tell you that it does kill bacteria on surfaces, and I don't know, maybe you have surfaces in your body, who knows? But I can also tell you that biologically, it supports your immune system magnificently. So if I had cancer, and I'm very happy to tell you that I don't, but if I had cancer, I would take for myself about 100 to 125 milligrams of CBD in whatever delivery system I chose, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And I would take a capful of CBD 3, 4, maybe even 6 times a day. Both of them are totally non-toxic. Both of them are totally acceptable to your body, and both of them are essential for well-being. Now, of course, yes, I offer nanosilver as a dietary supplement to support homeostasis only. So for the FDA people who are listening, for the FTC people who are listening, for the NSA people who are listening, I'm so glad you're here. Maybe you're learning something. That would be nice. And let me say again that I recommend nanosilver as a dietary supplement to support homeostasis only. The fact that it does other things is none of my concern, because the FDA tells me and tells you that a nutrient may not be used with the following words, in conjunction with the following words: prevent, mitigate, cure, diagnose, or treat any ailment. The fact that nutrients might do that cannot be shared legally in the United States, because we live in a fairyland of pharmaceutical regulatory deceit and dishonesty. But surely I would never say that a nutrient could possibly treat, mitigate, prevent, cure, or diagnose anything. They do, in fact, lead to a regulation and support of homeostasis and normal structure and function. FDA compels us to utter an opinion, as Ralph has said, that nutrients are not for certain purposes. We may not hold that opinion. Now, to go back to what I was saying, CBD. If I had cancer, if someone I were treating had cancer, and I've treated many people with cancer, CBD to support their immune and inflammatory homeostasis would be top on my list. Nanosilver to support their immune homeostasis would be equally top on my list. Now, there are other things that you need to be doing. I spoke about diet. I spoke about organic food. There are a lot of other things that you need to be doing. And should you want this kind of homeostasis, let me put down on the chat a link, www.nsfmarketplace.com. And you can go there and you can find what I believe to be the best nanosilver on the planet, and what I also believe to be the best CBD on the planet. Now, when you go to nsfmarketplace.com, you will find CBD chocolate. If you have cancer, do not use the kind that has sugar. Use the sugar-free, which uses monk fruit CBD chocolate. You will find oil. You will find phenomenal capsules, which also have astaxanthin and have D-ribose and have aloe vera inner leaf powder to enhance the absorption. So you're taking a 25 milligram capsule of CBD, but you're getting the impact of much more. And since it's not toxic, that's a good thing. Well, you'll find oil, beautiful CBD, 1,500 milligrams in a 1 ounce bottle, and it's at a phenomenal price, absolutely phenomenal. It's on sale right now. We only have a limited supply left, and we only have a limited supply of the capsules left. So if you want it, you need to go there now. But you say to yourself, well, I don't know which one to use. Should I use the oil? Should I use the chocolate? Should I use the capsule? What should I do? And the answer is whatever you're most comfortable with, because we offer a variety of delivery systems, but the CBD is the same in every one of them. So you can say to yourself, well, I would like to take the oil, hold it in my mouth. It's concentrated. Every dropper full has 50 milligrams, and I think I need 100 or 125 milligrams. So I'll take 2 or 2.5 droppers full during the day, and that'll be convenient for me. Terrific. Or you might say, you know, I just need the impact of 25 milligrams. I want to have a homeostatic response, make my aches and pains go away, get rid of the fibromyalgia, whatever. Of course, nutrients don't do that, only support homeostasis. And so 25 milligrams is perfect, and the anti-inflammatory astaxanthin and the repair potential of the Laibow, great, I'll take the caps. Excellent. Or, well, my father is recovering from chemotherapy. His appetite is suppressed, and I think the chocolate would be wonderful for him because it will be acceptable to him and he'll enjoy it, and we'll be getting 60 milligrams of CBD in a bar into him. And we know that pain and inflammation and so on respond to homeostasis produced by CBD. So, or depression responds to homeostasis produced by nutritional supplemental CBD. And so that's a good delivery system in that case. It doesn't matter as long as you're getting the supplemental CBD. Now, I've given you a little bit of information about some of the wonderful, wonderful things that you can do. But there are more. There are lots more. And you need to know not only what to do in the event that you or someone you care about is dealing with cancer, and how to understand the options and choose from the options in order to not be herded into the funnel of chemotherapy and radiation and possibly even surgery. In addition to that, you really need concentrated information. So I urge you to go to drrimarecommends.com. That's www.drrimarecommends.com. Why? Ralph, perhaps you could put up the Dr. Rima Recommends page on the live stream. I don't know if you can do that, but if you can, that would be really cool. Why is the Natural Solutions Foundation spending time and energy and staff effort and my effort and Ralph's and Dr. General Burt's effort putting out these, try clicking on the 3 dots at the end of my name. Okay, that's a different thing that's going on the chat. Why are we spending time accumulating resources for you that you can click on and you can learn from and you can choose? Many of them are free, so it's not an economic thing for us. But we understand that you and I are under assault. powerful, lethal assault. And that assault starts with cutting the supply line to your information, making it impossible for us to say what we believe, what we know nutrients do, by FDA and congressional gags that serve the pharmaceutical lying, killing industry. And oh, by the way, yesterday, the Washington Post ran a story about a study that was published showing that the third leading cause of death in the United States is medical error. Now, that's very interesting. The second leading cause of death in the United States is cardiovascular disease and stroke. The first leading cause of death in the United States is properly used pharmaceuticals on an outpatient basis. So outside the hospital, following the directions on the little vial and on the prescription pad that the doctor gives you is the most likely way to die. Then there's heart disease. Of course, if people would do chelation with EDTA, and if people would take vitamin E and fish oil, and if they would take the herb cratagus, and if they would take vitamin C, the cardiovascular issues would not be the #2 cause of death. But never mind, never mind. They're taking statin drugs, which are killing them. They're taking a variety of other drugs, which are killing them. So #1 killer is properly used pharmaceutical medications. #3 killer is improperly used medications. Huh? What? That means #1 and #3 killers in the United States are the pharmaceutical murdering madmen, also known as doctors, trained by the pharmaceutical industry to do that and brainwashed to think that they're doing something good. What does that mean? That means that the pharmaceutical industry is in fact carrying out depopulation genocide, and their agents are the medical industry hacks and flacks. Now, I have a medical license, as many of you know. I have never killed anybody with a drug. To my knowledge, I've never killed anybody. I've never killed anybody with a drug for a very simple reason. I don't write prescriptions. Nobody who comes to see me walks out with a little piece of paper that can kill them. Doesn't happen. It doesn't need to happen. But people who come to see me walk out with recommendations for CBD. They walk out with recommendations for nanosilver. They walk out with recommendations for organic food. They walk out with recommendations for specific nutrients and specific herbs, for detoxification procedures, for breathing procedures, and for focus and cleansing at the neurological, mental, emotional, and if they are open to it, spiritual levels. And you know what? They get well. They don't die from anything I gave them. And typically they don't die from their diseases either. They get well. Then they get healthy. And then they get radiantly well. Well, how very interesting. That you might call that anti-genocide. You might call it genogenesis, helping people become what they can be. Like angiogenesis is the creation of blood vessels. This is genogenesis, people becoming more deeply human, people becoming more able to live inside their lives. Well, how very, very important that is. Meanwhile, the number one killer in the United States is properly used pharmaceutical drugs. And the number three killer in the United States is improperly used pharmaceutical drugs. And among those pharmaceutical drugs, properly and improperly used, are chemotherapy drugs and radiation medicine. Here, just swallow this and it'll take radiation and put it into your thyroid or your gut or wherever it is that we send it. Unnecessary, dangerous. Now, you may have heard me say this before. Every 2 years, McGill University finds a way to occupy its graduate students in one of its departments. And what it's, oh, by the way, Ralph is showing, and I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of impossible for me to read. Maybe it's possible for you to read, but Ralph is showing you the Natural Cancer Prevention Summit. It's free. You want to find out how not to get cancer? You want to find out how to get your genes back under control so they're not producing cancerous cells, and get your immune system back functioning in a tip-top way so that you don't have to worry about cancer. Well, of course, CBD and nanosilver are the two big guys, but there's more. You would go and attend this summit for free, and there should be a link. When you go there, you just click on it and you reserve your spot for a free symposium by world-class experts. And by the way, everything that's on the Dr. Rima Recommends page has been vetted by me. All of the information is worth having. Every bit of what we're talking about is important to you and is being presented by doctors whom I respect and doctors whose work I trust. That's a pretty big statement. That means that I've taken the time and trouble to evaluate these resources for you, whether it's about diabetes or fibromyalgia or cancer prevention or Lyme disease or whatever. And there you will find the best health aids that I know of, and some of our webinars and so on. This is a resource that we're creating because in order to counter the blocked flow of information that you need to be free, in order to counter that, we've decided to really lean into the Information Flow Project. And so we've created drrimarecommends.com for you to be able to have the information that you need to make the choices that make sense for you and your children. It's not about the pharmaceutical industry training a doctor with a pharmaceutical rep, whining, dining, seducing the doctor, leaving free samples. It's about you as an independent human being, making the choices that are good for you, that feel right to you intellectually, that feel right to you emotionally, that feel right to you intuitively, and then following them, seeing what happens. We've worked very hard, and we will be adding more and more resources. We want you to tell the people that you know about Dr. Rima Recommends.com. And we also want you to tell people about Dr. Rima Truth Reports. I'm going to put that on the chat, www.drrimatruthreports.com. That's our principal site. And there, oh, it's not sent. It doesn't like web addresses. Okay, so we're going to do www. and that's one message. And then Dr. Rima, truth reports, and that's another message. And then we're going to do D-T-C-O-M. Okay, so it's drrimatruthreports.com. So there, YouTube. Anyway, I was talking about the fact that you need information, and then you need access to the things that will allow you to carry out your health strategy. One of those things is the Natural Solutions Foundation Vaccine Advance Directive, the Advanced Vaccine Directive. Now, if you're like Ralph and you're like me and you're like other people who understand what's going on, the last thing you would ever want to do is allow anybody to put a vaccine into your body or your child's body or your parents' body or the body of anybody you care about and have dominion over. And you do, as a free person, have the right to complete dominion over your own body and your minor children. Well, recently, a legal expert testified before the United Nations this week. And she said, you know, government vaccine mandates violate the Nuremberg Code, violate the Geneva Conventions, violate the inviolate right of informed consent. And the people at the UN went, It's not clear what they thought because the people at the UN are among the globalists carrying out the depopulation through vaccination. Oh yes, vaccination is part of the depopulation agenda. Vaccines don't work. Vaccines spread diseases, and vaccines weaken the immune system and put horrible things into your body. Well, we don't know what they actually said, but she said in a brilliant 10-minute lecture that which you can find on our site called www.opensource, and I'm going to make it a separate chat. Oh, message not sent. Any web addresses? Okay, we'll leave out the www for this. It's open source truth, and then again .com. Okay. Oh, that doesn't look right. Let me just, okay. You get it. It's opensourcetruth.com. And we posted her lecture there. And the question is, so what does that mean to you? And the answer is everything. Because what you need is called an advanced vaccine directive. An advanced vaccine directive is a card. Let me see if I have mine in my wallet. I generally do. And today, I don't happen, oh yes I do. No, I don't. I have a credit card. That's not what I'm looking for. An advanced vaccine directive, and Ralph can put the image of it up. An advanced vaccine directive is a card that has your name, the date you signed it, and your printed name on it. And it complies with the legal requirement for correctly asserting that you do not wish to be vaccinated. Well, okay, you can assert that you do not wish to be vaccinated, and the government can say, well, too bad. But Ralph can give you a history and an understanding of why international law, in fact, prevails in whatever country you are in, as long as that country has, there's the Advanced Vaccine Directive card, as long as that country is a signator of the Geneva Conventions, and 126 countries are. So what that means is that when you properly assert your wish to refuse any medical treatment, in this case vaccines, It is a type of living will. And the doctor or nurse or hospital or EMT person who violates that is personally guilty of malpractice, is personally guilty of assault and battery, is personally guilty, very, very likely, of depriving you of your civil rights. And that is quite different from the freedom of liability, from the protection that these same people have if they give you a vaccine and the vaccine causes an adverse event. It's a separate matter. And Ralph can certainly talk about this. So what we have is the legal right in Australia, in Canada, in the United States, in Russia, in China, in Japan, in Bhutan, in Pakistan, wherever, to say, no, I do not consent to being vaccinated. No, I do not consent to having my child vaccinated. And lo and behold, what happens is that the law must obey no matter what California has passed, no matter what Australia has passed, no matter what Israel has passed, no matter what Saudi Arabia has passed, no matter what. If you understand your rights and you have a vaccine directive, you have declared and asserted your informed consent right to not be vaccinated. And if you are vaccinated, woe betide the person and the institution if you take the next step, which is to sue the living tar out of them. That's how powerful this little card is. You can get it, and I think somebody else will have to write the link in the chat, and Ralph, perhaps you can put it up. You can get it at tinyurl.com/AVD card. That's AVD for Advanced Vaccine Directive card. Now, let me be frank. If you're the only person in Bhutan, or the only person in Illinois, or the only person in New South Wales who has an Advanced Vaccine Directive card, the likelihood of having it be understood and recognized is lower than if you and your friends and your neighbors and your co-workers and your kids, friends, parents are carrying these cards. Why? Because this requires mass pushback in order to stop the globalist depredation of our bodies and our rights, our future, our survival, and our very DNA integrity, which is what vaccines threaten. Now, it behooves you to share this information with everybody you know who might be interested in not being coerced. Now, maybe people want vaccines, but maybe they don't want them on a forced basis. Maybe they want some vaccines. I think that's an error, but I'm not making your medical decisions. Maybe people want some vaccines. They think, well, I need this one, but I don't want that one. It's their right. Or maybe, like me, like General Burt, like Ralph, having carefully studied the issues and the science and the reality, maybe the furthest thing in the world that they want for themselves and the people that they care for would be a vaccine. I don't want any vaccines. I was living in Panama, and the Ministry of Health, the Minister of Health to be exact, came out with a dictum. He said, anyone entering or leaving Panama must have a yellow fever vaccine more than 10 days ago. Okay. And all the expats like me living in Panama, or almost all of them, went racing off to their doctors to get yellow fever vaccine shots so they could travel next month or maybe next year. And I wrote in the bulletin boards, the chat groups for such people, and I said, wait a minute, let's see, am I muted now? I don't think I muted myself.
You're okay. No, you're
okay. Did I mute
okay.
myself? No, I did
You're
not.
okay.
Maybe Ralph is muted. I don't know. But you signed me a wrench. I could just type the address to Ralph. Okay. So I wrote to the other gringos, the other expats in the forums, and I said, wait a minute. If you are over 60, the World Health Organization recommends that you not have a yellow fever vaccine ever again. Why? Well, rather interesting, because about 9% of the people over 60 who have a yellow fever vaccine will be fine for a month, and then in 30 days, they will have massive multiple organ system failure. And of those, about 16% will die. Probably not a good idea. So the World Health Organization recommends that people over 60 not have a yellow fever vaccine. And the Minister of Health either didn't know that or didn't care or hadn't bothered to listen to what anybody had to say to him, or maybe nobody said it to him. I don't know. And I said, you really need to ask your doctor to not give you a yellow fever vaccine shot and to give you a vaccine exemption based on the fact that you're over 60. Well, Panama is a retirement haven for people who are over 60 from other countries, and there were lots and lots and lots and lots of them. And what that did was very interesting. It evoked a firestorm. The expats went nuts, and they yelled and they screamed and they wrote things in capital letters, and they called me a radical and said I was paranoid. It's just what the World Health Organization says about yellow fever vaccines for people over 60. Check it out yourself. And after a while, they all kind of figured out that they shouldn't get yellow fever vaccines if they were over 60. But if they had been carrying the advanced vaccine directive card, all they had to do was say at the border or at the hospital or wherever, I refuse all vaccines. And we have it in Spanish as well as in English. tinyurl.com/AVD card. You need one for yourself. You need one for the baby. You need one for your kid in school. Put it in the backpack. Put it in the baby's diaper bag. You need one in your purse or your wallet. No one should be without it. Don't leave home without it, because the roving, mobile vaccination police are on their way to an intersection, a checkpoint near you. They're on their way to a school cafeteria near you. They're on their way to a pharmacy. Get vaccinated here for free near you. This is very serious. And by the way, did you know that since 2011, every single company licensed to deploy vaccines or approved to, excuse me, approved to deploy vaccines in the United States has a contract with the Defense Department. Now that's interesting. And those contracts, which are a matter of public record, say that they will be using nanochips in their vaccines. That was starting in 2013. Do you really want to be chipped? Do you really want something that can be tuned and turned on or turned off and is transmitting biological information about you all the time and location information? Do you really want that in your body? Are they safe? Or are the pets that are chipped, and these are not nanochips, these are visible chips, are the pets that are chipped developing cancer at an astonishing rate? Why, yes, they are. And what about the people, those few people who have so far been chipped? 2, 3 years, what's their cancer rate like? How about their infertility rate? Do these chemicals or do these chips release frequencies that change biological function? Oh, well, that's just science fiction fantasy. No, it's not. No, it's not. I can play a frequency, I could play it over the internet, that would change your biological functioning, that would energize you or put you to sleep or possibly trigger an immune system collapse or whatever. These things exist and they're very real. Perhaps we'll do another show on them. The reality is, I don't want anything that the government wants to put into my body in there. I don't want the glyphosate or glyphosate in English. I don't want the GMO foods. I don't want the vaccines. I don't want the chemtrail chemicals. Thank you very much. I'll take my body the way Mother Nature intended it. And I imagine you would like it that way for yourself and for others as well. Now, some people say nanochips are the mark of the beast. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. I don't need revelations to tell me that I don't want anything the government wants me to have in my body in there. Very simple, with or without the theology. Works real well for me. I don't want the government putting anything in my body other than what Mother Nature put in my body for me. And I'm not interested in being rendered transhuman. I'm not interested in having my biology monitored and altered. I'm not interested in being captured by technology or eliminated by technology. Ralph, are you available to be heard at this point?
I'm happy to be heard, Dr.
Are you
Rima.
there?
Well, yes, I am. Now, I don't know if you can hear me.
I hear you talking.
All right.
I wonder if the audience does. I do not, the audience, and I'm not interested in being rendered transhuman. I'm not, Ralph, I am not hearing your audio. I don't know whether that's a problem with me. Could people in the chat,
it's a problem with you.
Tell
it's a problem
us
with
whether
you.
they can hear Ralph speaking or not?
Sure. Testing 1, 2, 3. I'm on.
Anybody hearing Ralph?
Yep.
You always want to hear Ralph. Everything
he
says is genuinely brilliant.
All right.
But Ralph, I don't hear anything. There you are. There you are. Yes. Talking.
Because of this almost 1 minute delay, it's very difficult to carry on a conversation. It's like one of us is somewhere in the asteroid belt and the other of us is on Earth. So normally the 6,000 miles between us doesn't affect the timing of our communication, but there's this strange glitch going on that's doing that. You're off completely, Dr. Rima. I don't hear you at all now. That's so strange. Let's see. You're definitely off. Dr. Rima, you are not on. Let me send you a message. Excuse the back of my head. I'm going to turn my camera off. I think that's a good idea. All right. We no longer have Dr. Rima on. Do we have, let me see. No longer have audio from you. Now let's find out. Live stream. Hear you at all now.
Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
That's so strange.
Can you hear me?
You're
I,
definitely off. Dr. Rima, you are not on. Let me send you a message.
okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. No sound. Wow, this is weird.
Now we have sound, Dr. Rima. Now you have
Probably
sound.
not.
Now sound. Now.
Ralph, I am going to hang up on Skype and I'm going to call you back.
All right. Well, while Dr. Rima is rebooting, what I'm going to do is, let's see. If Dr. Rima is rebooting, it is an opportunity for me to discuss some of the things that have been happening over the past week. That's always a useful thing to begin with. We are always getting information, and I've been monitoring as closely as I can independent information sources. By that I mean people posting on places like Facebook, but not directly, because we know there's more and more censorship in Facebook itself. And as we've been looking at some of the information sources, and I have to tell you, I really like Dr. Rima's open source truth website. That's a great one. And that's an excellent idea. Why don't we take a look at open source truth together? And there it is, open source truth. Right. Okay. Okay. There we go. Now, while we're waiting for Dr. Rima to reboot, it's probably an interesting idea to take a look at what has been posted. We all do this in a communal way. We have an interesting couple of writers who help us out, and we search the web for information, for other articles, and then we bring them together about health and health freedom. It's an excellent source. Some things I haven't had a chance to read yet. We shouldn't trust General Mills and their GMO labeling, huh? All right, lobbyists aside on toxicity. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Record-breaking warming. That's interesting. Let's see if we can go beyond that. Let's see. Recent comments. Oh, okay. Whooping cough because she did not vaccinate. Want to buy a bridge. All right. Interesting. Let's take a look at our archive for May. I guess that's where we are right now. Yes. Oh, okay. Receiving Gardasil. We've had enough of these reports, haven't we, folks? 12-year-old dies suddenly after receiving Gardasil. Not good. The Bondi Hotel, where is that? We have some good friends in Australia, actually, who are bringing some of this information to us as well. Coal ash dumping in Virginia's rivers. All right. History of one of pure evil stretching across generations. Seriously. Oh, all right. That's interesting. That's the sort of thing you'll see at Open Source Truth. Why we shouldn't trust General Mills. Yeah, we took a look at that. I want to go to Open Source Truth main page here. Oops. There we go. That way we get the, all right, here we go. This is the scroll on the top. Let's see what article they have. Yeah, I think we've seen these so far. I think we may get some more articles. Or maybe it's only the first half dozen. Yeah, it's only the first half dozen that seem to do that. So I will not likely to be able to do that. All right. Brazil mercury poisoning. Oh, that's interesting. There have been a number of problems in Brazil, as you know. Illegal mines in Brazil leaving behind a legacy of mercury poisoning for the natives. Right. Well, Dr. Rima has written fairly extensively on the issue of Zika back to Brazil and the relationship between Zika and various toxins, including environmental toxins. And it looks like parts of Brazil have, in addition, over 90% of indigenous communities in Brazil's Amazon have been affected by mercury poisoning. My gosh, I would have to call that genocide, wouldn't one? Very interesting. A joint study conducted by the Brazilian Health Foundation, Fiocruz, the Hutucara Yanomami Association, and then another couple of associations here, and tested hair samples from indigenous people in 19 different communities in one region of the Amazon. All right, the results were stunning. Up to 90% of them have been severely affected by mercury poisoning. After alarmingly high levels of mercury were found in water and food sources, various indigenous people in the region, the study's authors decided to take a closer look. The mercury is believed to be present due to the high level of illegal gold mines in the area. It's a byproduct of that mining. They're mainly used in smaller artisanal mines as part of the amalgamation process, which binds the gold in the ore to mercury in order to extract it. Then they burn off the mercury. Oh, wonderful. I mean, let me tell you, this is completely crazy. The Secretary of State for Mining, Geodiversity, and Water Resources say that new regulations implemented in June should mitigate some of the current problems by requiring miners to take precautions. Oh, that's nice of them. For starters, by using simple equipment called crucibles or retorts, the miners could dramatically reduce the amount of mercury released into the atmosphere. Regulations also require all miners to take a course on good environmental practice. Yeah, I would assume that if you can, instead of releasing the mercury into the atmosphere, you can reuse it. It probably saves the miners money as well. It would seem to be a rational and reasonable thing to do. We never seem to wake up until it's too late, says the author of this piece. Indeed, that's what it is. Well, that's where we go. Let's go back and see what else we can find here. Students protesting. Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm going to go back to our April. See if we can scroll down here and find Fukushima birth defects. This is one that's very troubling. As you know, one of our correspondents is former Japanese ambassador to Switzerland, Murata, or as we say, Murata-san, which is the Japanese honorific. And he's been publishing copies of letters that he's been writing to everyone, from the Pope to the Secretary General and on and out, basically urging the world to get behind the idea that Tokyo is going to be too hot for the 2020 Olympics, and that Japan really needs to focus in on solving Fukushima, and it should engage in what he calls an honorable retreat from the 2020 Olympics. His articles have been extraordinary, and we're basically the only place in the United States or in the English-speaking world where you can see up to date information directly from the conscience of Fukushima, as Murata-san is known. Well, here we have an article: babies born with extra limbs in areas surrounding Fukushima covered up. 5 years after Fukushima nuclear disaster, a cluster of babies born with extra limbs and other severe side effects. Alarming news out of Fukushima as birth defects. Here she goes. All right. Well, Dr. Rima, are you with us?
Hi.
Hello.
Well, we have 18 minutes, and during those 18 minutes, I would really love it if we could lay the groundwork for people being able to ask questions and interact. I'm going on to healthfreedomportal.org. I'm going to try to get onto the live stream. And I think it would be very interesting to do kind of a verbal FAQ about what this whole health freedom thing means and why we're jumping up and down about you having the right to say yes or no to anything. The live stream is on. I see that I am on. I have no sound at all from you, Ralph.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Okay. And the delay is shorter. That's interesting. Now, oh, I just got a sound from you, I think, on the live stream. So what I'm going, okay, so I'm having sound on the live stream from you, and I'm speaking to you, I guess, over Skype. I can't think of anything else that would make sense. So what I'm going to do is turn down the sound really, really low so that I am not hearing myself while I'm speaking. And I'm going to, again, say what I think we could use this time for. I think it was very, very, it is important to kind of give out the basic facts in a format that's a verbal equivalent of an FAQ. And those basic facts start with the Geneva Convention, but most people do not understand how international law protects them. They think that only the law of the state or the law of the nation in which they live protects or limits them. And I think that at this moment, although international law could very easily destroy us through things like the TPP, we have one area where international law is our staunch defender and guardian. And you as an attorney, you as a student of this law and many others, I think are the person to give the introduction and lay it out. And then I think we ought to have a question and answer show next week. So we'll let our audience know at our Facebook page, which is Natural Solutions Foundation, and we'll let people know on our Twitter accounts, which are Dr. Rima Laibow and Health Freedom US. We'll let them know that we're going to have a freedom question and answer session, whether people live in Australia or New Zealand or India or South Africa, Ireland, Canada, France, England, the United States, Spain, Chile, wherever they live, if they can ask us questions about their freedom and how it is being impacted, limited, or expanded, we'll be happy to answer. What do you think about that, Ralph?
A great idea. I don't know, you can't hear me, but folks can hear me.
And I'm pausing now so that you can catch up with me.
Right. Now, I think that because of the delay, it's going to be impossible for us to have a dialogue. But I also posted on our screen the general brief I've written about the law of informed consent. And I suggest that folks go to drrimatruthreports.com and go to that page.
You know, if I did not know what I know about health freedom, I would assume that the state owned my body. I would assume that the state could do what it liked to me or to my children. I would assume that the new FDA ruling that, or regulation, that the procedure, the horrifyingly brutal and destructive procedure known as electroconvulsive therapy or electroshock, can now be used for anybody who has a defiant or oppositional behavior. I would assume that that would be kind of the end of my rights and my freedoms. I would assume that the battle was over and that there was nothing that we could do. And I would be wrong. I would be very, very wrong because there is a great deal that we can do. The other side, the opposition, the depopulationists and globalists want us to believe that we are powerless. They are the man behind the curtain, if you will, and they're trying to convince us that they are the great and magnificent Oz, when they are really the insignificant, frightened, well-heeled, they certainly have money, insignificant and insufficient enemy. And they are the enemy. The globalists are the enemy. That that's an important thing to realize. They're not your friends. The UN is not your friend. The World Health Organization is not your friend. The FDA is not your friend. The CDC, the EPA, the FTC, they're not your friends. They're there to serve their masters. And their masters are the corporate forces. And those corporate forces, now that they're people, have become emboldened, and they have become more aggressive toward you and toward me. The agenda of a corporation is not the same as the agenda of a human being, even though human beings make up and run corporations. Corporations are intended to do one thing and one thing only, and that is create a profit for their investors. And that indeed is their legal responsibility under the statutes that govern the setting up and the responsibilities and rights and limitations of corporations. They have one goal and one goal only. Now, if you run a corporation of corporations, a mega corporation, and if your goal is to maximize profit for the small number of people or corporations who hold the interest in your entity, and if it comes to your mind that it would be good for you to get rid of the people living in the Amazon forest rain basin, then if you have no scruples, if you have no morality, if you are a corporate person, or if your mentality has been taken over by corporate values, which is to say no values, then you're going to say, okay, get rid of them. You're not going to say, wait, there's a moral imperative here. They are human beings. They have the same right to be on the planet as I, a human being, have to be on the planet. You're not going to say, wait, some things are morally and ethically wrong. You're not going to say, wait, I don't want to live with the internal consequences or the external consequences of doing so. You might say, wait, I have a spiritual belief, or wait, I have a religious belief, or wait, I have a humanistic belief. I might be an atheist, but I have a set of values that guide me. If you're a corporation, you're not allowed to have those values. You can look green, you can tap dance green, you can jump up and down green, and you can greenwash your activities. But as a corporation, you are only allowed to have one value system, and that is I make a profit for my investors, my shareholders. That's it. So if corporations are given governance, and TPP gives corporations governance, then we are fighting the corporate state. If people who serve corporations are given governance and regulatory responsibility and power so that they can serve the corporations whose only goal is to make a profit for their shareholders and their investors, then we are at war with the corporate state. There is nothing wrong with making a profit. There is nothing wrong with running a corporation. There is everything wrong with making a corporation's only goal the goal of the people who make decisions in, around, for, and relating to that corporation. Because inevitably, the corporation's only goal, which is to make a profit for its shareholders, becomes the state's only goal as the corporation seeks, through lobbying, bribery, well-placed politicians, and so on, seeks to control the government. Now, the government either exists to control you, or it exists to be controlled by you and serve you. There is no, in my view, intermediate position. Either The government controls you and you fear it. Or you control the government and it fears you. And through its fearing you, the corporations fear you. And that, according to the founding fathers, is the healthy state of governance. It's not what we have right now, unless you and I, unless your friends and their friends, unless the parents of the people that your kid goes to school with and you become aware of the fact that either you're the slave or the master. And whom would you like to be the slave to? Well, you probably would choose to be the slave, if you were going to be a slave, of a benign, benevolent master, an individual who could be moved to pity, for example. But that's not where we are. We're moving into a neo-feudalist state where the master is the corporate state. And corporations are not moved to pity. Corporations are by law not permitted to have pity. Corporations are moved to act, to produce profit, whatever the consequences. Now, you may say, yes, but I'm a CEO of a corporation and I act ethically. When you act ethically, you are not acting as a corporate entity. You are acting as a human entity and good for you. But the reality is that the entities that are combining to form super entities have no ethics. They have no morals. And they are firmly committed, along with the governments of most of the planet, to depopulation. You see, John D. Rockefeller Jr. decided that he was a big fan of eugenics, ethnic cleansing, purifying the race. He introduced that concept to Germany by supporting the two Kaiser Wilhelm Institutes in Munich and in Berlin. And then he supported anything that would reduce the population, getting rid of its undesirables. And then he became a social engineer. He created the concept of overpopulation. Truly, there is no overpopulation. Go to overpopulationisamyth.com. Watch the videos, read the material, and then come back to me and tell me that overpopulation is a reality. It is a social engineering myth that was created by John D. Rockefeller Jr., the Rockefeller Foundation, Chase Bank, etc., in order to justify genocide, zero population growth, all of these other wonderful greenwashed organizations. It's all balderdash. It's all horse pucky pseudo-science, like vaccine science. And given that, the corporations have only one goal, and that is getting rid of us if we're in the way and making a profit. We have to control the corporate state. That's our mission. It is now just about the end of the Dr. Rima Truth Reports. We've had a terrible time electronically. I hope that those of you listening will find this useful and informative. Next week, we will be talking about your questions about freedom and how to achieve it on the Dr. Rima Truth Reports. Thank you, Ralph, for putting up with all this nonsense, and thank you to our listeners.
All right, folks, this is the end of another Dr. Rima Truth Reports. Great being with you.